everyone, I'm Audie and welcome to my lair, Stitched in Shadows. So today I'm going to be doing a crochet with me / mini tutorial. I'm going to be doing a mini frog pattern, which is free on Instagram and linked down below so you can follow along if you want. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need for it. I'm going to walk you through the difficult stitches. I will not, however, tell you what the row is or what stitches are on that row, simply because I don't want to inherently redistribute the pattern by tinyfish.crochet. So yeah, let's get started. Things first, your materials. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need. Sorry for all the clip cutting. I can't English today. So first things first is going to be your yarn, the most important part. I'm going to be using Baby Bee from Hobby Lobby in the colors Mint Charm and Angel. These were $5 a skein. I actually bought these when it was 30% off. I recommend watching for those sales. I never want to spend full price on yarn. You can also use Premier Parfait Chunky. That's also really great. I've been using them a lot here recently. You can also use burnout blankets, which I also recommend. Make sure you look out for the texture though. I recommend buying burnout in person because there are two different formulas. You have the old formula and the new formula. The old formula is more dense, has like that icky texture. Those who know. And the new formula is a lot softer, more plush, which I prefer, and I think you would prefer too. Next important thing is your hook. So for the yarn that I'm going to be using a 5mm hook. And for burnout blankets, I would recommend using a 6.5mm hook. This is the size hook that I tend to use with burnout. Next thing is your needle. You are going to want one that is curved at the end. It is a million times easier to sew with one that is curved at the end, not straight. You can buy a million of these from Amazon for $5. This is the brand. It comes with a whole bunch. I tend to lose mine, hence why I also tend to keep it in the container. Next thing is your stitch markers. I recommend these because even though you might think you can count, crochet will prove you wrong. So get a stitch marker. It prevents you from having to count too awful much and helps you keep track of where you are. And I also am going to be using safety eyes. If you're using burnout blanket, I recommend 12mm safety eyes. If you're using a size 6 yarn like what I am, you're going to be wanting 10mm safety eyes. Last thing is Poly-Fil. I use the Ultra Plush. I buy this from Walmart for $5. If you're going to Hobby Lobby or a craft store, regular Poly-Fil will work too. However, I find that when I stuff my plushies with that, they're not as squishy or as soft to cuddle, which I find very important because a lot of my target audience tends to be children. So then let's get started. The pattern is linked down below. Make sure you go snag that, write it down so you can follow along if you want. I will walk you through the important stitches that I know I struggled with. So we're going to start with the magic ring because this pattern starts with the magic ring. I do have a tutorial on my channel. It is the first video I ever posted, so I won't do a complete walkthrough here. This one's a little bit different than the one I had in my video. The one for this pattern only has 5 single crochets. So I recommend going to follow that video, but not 6, 5 of them. And then come back. You back yet? Okay, we're moving on. So I'm going to make this magic ring. Those of you who are learning how to crochet by watching this video, I recommend slowing it down. Go to settings, change playback speed to 0.25 or 0.5. My voice is going to sound a little crazy. It's going to be okay. It's a lot easier to follow when it's slower. And you can actually see what I'm doing with the hook. I might cut between rows. I will not cut and like suddenly have a whole bunch of a frog done. I won't do that to you guys. But because of my dyslexia, I tend to mess up English a lot. So filming this whole frog in one go is going to be a challenge, for sure. So I'm gonna move on to the next row, and then I might do a cut after that just to give my poor mouth a break. All right, this row is made up completely of increases. So I just did one, and now I'm gonna tell you how to do an increase. So an increase, you know how to do a single crochet at this point, but an increase, you're gonna go into like you're doing a single crochet. Just take the yarn over, pull through both loops. Now you're gonna go back into that same hole that you just did a single crochet in and do another single crochet. It's basically 2 single crochets in one. That's basically all it is. I didn't know that. I thought it literally was just pulling out a big loop and then having these big holes in your yarn. That is not it. Okay, you guys, I was stupid. It's okay, we were learning. We have improved over time, just like you will too. Like the first project I ever made took me 3 days. And now this project would only take me maybe an hour, if that. That's it. Okay, I am done with this row. I'm going to cut the video for a second and we will be right back. I wanted to show you guys my first project real quick. This guy. It took me 3 days. And he does not look great. But that is perfectly fine. He was my first child. So I did not know what a decrease was, what a bobble stitch was, what an increase was. I didn't know any of that. Apparently I knew how to sew. Don't ask. I don't know either. But this is the first little guy. He took me 3 days. Something like this would only take me an hour now, if that. So this is just a reminder that your first project is going to look crappy, for a lack of a better word. Don't give up, because you will continue to improve. I promise you will. So now back to our daily broadcasting. Going back to the frog. All right, we have run into our first bobble stitch of the day. So I'm going to walk you through how to do a bobble. This is the one and only time I will walk you through how to do a bobble, except for the arms, since it's a little bit different because I'm doing a little less of a bobble than I am for the eyeballs. I will explain in a second. So in Tiny Fish's original pattern, she has you glue the eyes onto the face. Because we're using safety eyes, just because it's more accessible that way, I'm using a bigger bobble stitch than what I would use for the arms. So I'm going to yarn over my hook, insert it into the next loop, pull through another loop of yarn, yarn over, and I'm only going to pull through 2 of these. 1, 2. Now I have 1, 2 loops left on my hook. I'm going to repeat that again. Yarn over. And like an increase, I'm going to insert it into the same hole, pull through another loop. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yarn over, pull through just 2 of those. Now I have 1, 2, 3 left. Yarn over, insert into the same hole, pull through. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarn over, pull through just 2 of them. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where I would stop for the arms. This would be a triple crochet bobble. I'm going to be doing a 4 double crochet bobble. So yarn over, insert into the same hole. It's going to be a little challenging because it's a little crowded in there. Yarn over, pull through those first 2 little loops. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to yarn over. And now I'm going to pull through all 5 of those in one go. If you lose this loop, don't worry, you can always start this entire thing over again. I know it's going to be really frustrating having to unravel, redo. I've been there, I promise. It'll all be fine in the end. If you start getting frustrated, please just take a break. Take a breather, take a break, come back to it again later. Do not give up. because I believe you can do this. I did it, you can do it too. Now on to the second bobble here. It's gonna be our little eyeball bobble. Once again. One, two, three, four, five. Yarn over, pull through all 5. Alright, now we have our 2 little eyeball bobbles, which look like 2 little bumps on his head. Gonna replace my stitch marker back over here. That way it tells me that's where my row ended. Alright, we're on to the next one. Next round! I'm not going to talk much during this one just because counting here is so important. Alright, that row is done. Now we're going to be moving on to the row where we have a color change. I'll walk you through that as well, even though I didn't really mention it. I'll talk you through a color change. So the row first calls for some regular green. Alright, I am on the last green single crochet. So that's why I put auto stop. I'm going to insert it like a normal single crochet, but I'm not going to finish it yet. I'm going to keep it as the 2 little loops here. I'm going to take our green and our scissors. I'm going to cut a little bit of a tail here. And now it's time to introduce our white. Say hello. Welcome to the group chat. We're going to take our strand of white. We're going to put it on our hook. We're going to pull it through those 2 loops. We're mixing the 2 together. And I'm going to take these 2 little tails and knot them together to secure them. And now we have a clean color change. We can continue doing our white stitches. Okay, and I'm on my last white stitch. Again, I didn't finish it yet. I cut a little bit of the tail and reintroduce green back into the chat. Thankfully, this frog doesn't have too much color change. It's literally just the belly. That makes our lives a little bit easier. Also, don't worry about all these little tails. They're going to be on the inside. They won't even know they're there. I'm just going to finish out the row. Alright, replacing my stitch marker. That is the end of the row. I need a drink. I swear I don't take this many breaks during a project, but talking and crocheting at the same time leads to a lot of screw ups. So I've been having to frog and re-record this to you looks like the first take. I promise this is like the 5th. So again, don't worry about how quickly you can get this frog done. You will get it done. Okay, I promise. You got this. We're gonna move on to the row with the arms, where we introduce back loops and front loops. So give me just a second and we'll get there. Alright, for the arms, Tiny Fish wants us to work them in the front loops, so that way the next row we can have them stick out by working in the back loop of that same stitch. So for you beginners, I want you to take another stitch marker and put it in the back loop of that next stitch. That way you can see it. Right there. See that there? There's 2 different loops there. This is your front. The one I just put my stitch marker on is the back, right there. So working the arm chain, I'm gonna slip stitch into that front loop. Now this one is a half double crochet. I kind of forgot these were in here, but I'm going to teach you how to do a half double crochet. It's kind of like a bobble. You yarn over, insert through that next little chain, pull through. Now we have 1, 2, 3 loops on our hook. For a half double crochet, we're going to pull through all 3 of those. So now we're back down to 1. That little arm is done. So now we're back working through both loops. Wait, no, hold on. I can read. You're going to slip stitch back into that same loop. And now we have a little bitty arm. Now we're back into working both loops. But I'm not going to finish this stitch because it's time for color change. Reintroducing the white. I know you see a lot of shedding. Don't worry too much about that. It does get annoying, but it's not a huge deal. With hobby yarn, the shedding gets excessive. And it gets to a point where your yarn gets so thin that it becomes useless. That is why I switched over to Premier Parfait. They still shed, but not as bad, in my opinion. This stuff also does not shed as bad as hobby yarn. Again, this is Hobby Lobby Baby Bee. Alright, we're done with whites. Color changing back to green. Here's my end. There it is. Crochet is not as easy as a lot of people make it look. It's a little bit chaotic, but we love chaos in this household. So again, we're going to be working in the front loops after I do the single crochet. So you beginners who are learning how to do this, take another stitch marker, shove it in that back loop, just so you remember it's there. Bada bing, bada boom. You've separated your loops again, and then you're going to take over in that front loop. That's where we're going to put the arm. And this one calls for us to slip stitch back into the same stitch like an increase. There we go. Little arm number 2 is done. Now we're back into working the same stitches, 2 loops. That is the end of our row. We now have little bit arms. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put in my eyeballs before I forget, because I see myself doing that. So I'm going to take my two little safety eyes and their backings. And I'm going to find a place on this bobble stitch at the top to try and insert it in here. You want to make sure you can see the back on the inside. And then you're going to put the backing on that guy. All right, that is your first little eyeball. Repeat on the other side. This one tends to be a little bit more challenging. Okay, again, see it on the inside, put on your backing. Bada bing, bada boom. Now our eyes are secured and they're on there, and he now has a little bitty face. So cute. Alright, and we're on to our next row. So I'm going to follow along with the pattern here. I want my 9th stitch to end up on this first little white loop right here. That means this is not technically our next stitch. Our back loop is. So we're gonna go ahead and insert our hook into that back loop and put our single crochet through there where our stitch marker was, and take out that stitch marker. And then that was the last 2 stitches before our color change. So I'm not gonna finish that stitch because we're changing to white. Secure them together. And this is the last color change we're doing for this guy. We're almost there, you guys. The end is near. Right? And our color change officially done. We are done with white. So you can put white away. White is done. Now I'm going to finish out the row. Again, back loop of this stitch. All right, that row is done. I'm gonna fix my eyeball here. He's trying to run away. That will be fixed when we stuff it. It won't continue to just sink inwards. It's just doing that for now because we don't got anything to push it up. All right, next row. And this one we have our bobbles again. So I'm gonna crochet up until our first bobble. On Tiny Fish's pattern, they have the bobbles set in a way to where they should end up in the stitch in front of your arms. If your bobbles aren't ending up there, you're going to need to use the alternative that they also have in their pattern and see if that works for you. If not, you might have to modify it. You want your bobbles in the stitch in front of your arms. The stitch 2 stitches away from your white center belly here. Okay? The rest of it is just single crochets, so at least a modification here is not that difficult. For the yarn that I'm using, I don't need a modification. It's pretty spot on here. And that was my triple double crochet bobble there. So as I said, not as many loops on your hook when I finally pull through all of them. There's only going to be 4 instead of 5. These bobbles are a tiny bit smaller. I only needed the big bobbles for the eyes. I'm going to finish out this row. Okay. We have most of his body done now. He's looking a little rotund. That's what we want. Replace my stitch marker to the end of my row. Now we're getting to the close part of ending. So this row has decreases. I'm going to show you how to do a decrease in a second. This is a invisible decreases. Invisible decrease looks a lot better than a regular decrease. So you're going to insert your hook into that little loop there, pull in a loop like you're doing a single crochet, but you're not going to finish it like you're doing a color change. You're going to leave that there, and then in the next loop, pull in another one. So now you have 3 loops on your hook, but 2 of them are in different loops, in different stitches. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through all 3 of them like a half double crochet. And that is a decrease, because you are decreasing the number of stitches in a row by putting 2 of them together. Another decrease. Okay, and we're done with that row, and we are on to our last row here. Whoop, whoop. Now this row is entirely made up of decreases. At least you had a little bit of practice in the last row. This one is all decrease. Making this hole a lot smaller, making your rows smaller. This yarn is so squeaky. That's why I prefer Premier Parfait. It doesn't squeak. This yarn does. A lot of it's because of the velvety texture. Okay, and we are officially done with the crocheting part. Don't need to put the stitch marker back, because now we're going to cut a bit of a tail so we can sew this baby closed. Pull that yarn tail through that last stitch there. Now we're going to stuff him like a Thanksgiving turkey. Shove all that fluffy stuff in there until he is nice and full and firm. That's what she said. Now, some of you guys learning how to crochet might have heard of a Woobles kit. I don't recommend those. I may end up doing a video deep dive on why I don't recommend Woobles. That is not how I learned how to crochet, so I can't say for certain from a beginner's perspective what a Woobles is like, but I have had many a friend who has tried out a Woobles for the first time learning how to crochet and has ended up with more frustration than actually wanting to continue. So I will do a deep dive on those eventually if you guys want. Just let me know down in the comments. Yeah, I think that is good enough in terms of stuffing. He's nice and fat and chunky. So now I'm going to take my curved yarn needle here and pull that yarn through. I always like the bigger hook needle, bigger needles for this reason. And you're gonna do the front loops of your last row. You're gonna stitch it closed. You're gonna pull tight, kind of cinch it in like a drawstring bag. Don't pull too hard or else your yarn's gonna snap. Bernat is not easy to snap as much as Premier and Baby Bee is. Bernat is a lot tougher. Alright, I have just finished sewing that close. I'm gonna pull my needle through there, and I lost it. Hold on. This yarn is very velvety, very slippery. I'm gonna put my needle through there and tie a knot. Insert my hook into his body, kind of secure the end here. Cut the excess. If you're gonna keep crocheting, I recommend keeping your scraps and using them as stuffing later. Saves you a lot on Poly-Fil in the future, and also you're recycling all that yarn that you spent money on. I tucked in that tail using my scissors. And now his body's done. I'm gonna embroider a mouth real quick. I'm gonna show you how I do that too. Take some thin black yarn. Any kind of thin black yarn will work. I'm actually gonna switch to actual embroidery thread at some point, just because I don't like how fuzzy this gets. I just wanna use this stuff up first, because I don't wanna waste yarn. I'm gonna insert my hook anywhere in the body that's not where I want the smile to be. And then figure out where I want that smile to sit. I'm going to show you how to do a smile. I actually want to do a straight little derpy face, but I'll show you how to do a smile real quick. Going to insert your hook back into the body to make a straight-ish line, but then you're going to insert a row below in the center. So now you're right underneath that derpy line. Going to tug on it a little bit just to loosen it. Put it back through that hole you just pulled your yarn from, and then back through that hole that you inserted in the first place. Now he's got a cute little smiley face. For a derpy smile, hold on, I gotta pull this out. For a derpy smile, I'm not gonna have a V shape. It's just the first couple steps. Pull my yarn through, insert back to the body, and back through that hole that I put the yarn in the first place. Now he's got a derpy face. I prefer the derpy face on the frogs. I'm gonna tie a knot, secure these yarn tails here. Cut the excess. Save that for later. I think that's actually enough yarn to make another face later. I take my scissors and tuck those tails back into the body. And he's done! We have completed a little chonky frog. So good job, you guys. Those of you who are learning how to crochet, I wish you luck. Do not give up, because you will get there eventually. Coming from someone who spent 3 days on a tiny little dinosaur. You will get there, I promise. If you get frustrated, step away, find a snack, come back to it later. You'll get there. Alright, well, you guys have a good day. Like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below what you would like to see next. I plan on doing a crochet with me while also talking about a scary story, maybe reading one out to you, maybe reading a Reddit horror story or a creepypasta. Let me know what kind of stories you want to hear down below. Yeah, have a good one.